All right, everybody. I know everybody's still kind of coming back in from their lunch break, but I want to get this going for you guys and introduce our next speaker and mentor. Former Army Ranger, has gone through and transitioned into initially investment banking, and then now serves as the VP of Corporate Development for a company called High Ground. And he also launched in 2024 a podcast called Veteran Ventures Podcast, making the military transition process easier, where he interviews veterans that have transitioned out into the space, and picks and talks to them about their insights and what their transition story was about. Please welcome our next guest, Griffin Brand.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah,
Let me,
absolutely.
yeah,
No, it's a
go ahead
pleasure
and,
having you, Griffin. Thank you so much for being here and spending some time as a mentor to us in this and our academy. As we spoke before, most of our folks in this academy are all transitioning service members trying to make their first step into a career, a meaningful career on the outside. And we appreciate your insights and feedback and just giving back to our community. As you has transitioned out recently.
I appreciate it, Matt. Good to see everyone. Appreciate you all being here. Thanks to Seven Eagle Group for inviting me to be on and speak a little bit. Hopefully everyone can see this screen. I've just got a couple slides as a true military person would here. Like Matt mentioned, I've got a combat arms background, so if something malfunctions technologically, you're gonna have to forgive me. It probably will happen, but looks like we've got plenty of IT cybersecurity folks on here that will get me squared away pretty efficiently, I'm sure. I'll try and keep this pretty short and leave time for questions, follow-ups at the end. If you could just save those for the end, I'll love to get to all of them. And if we don't, happy to follow up individually afterwards. But uh, looking at the group here, is anyone excited for all the freedom that you'll have, or maybe currently have after you leave the military? I imagine maybe a couple of you are. I certainly was. No more requesting leave or going on pass, no more PCS orders or a rigid timeline that's dictating where you live. Um, well, I just want to discuss a little bit about how a little bit of structure can actually lead to a lot of freedom once you do transition. So I'm guessing everyone's familiar with the experience of sitting down in front of your TV to watch Netflix or something in the evenings. After you scroll through the hundreds of options, there's, one of two things that typically happens. One, you either default to choosing something you already know or you already watch, or two, you may even decide not to watch anything at all. The massive menu is just overwhelming. And I kind of think that leaving the military is a little bit like, at least for me, it was like looking at that Netflix menu. You go from one really clear mission to way too many choices. There's infinite job paths, locations, industries, lifestyles. The whole thing is pretty overwhelming. And I've talked to a lot of other people that have voiced the same. And so the frameworks that we'll cover this presentation are just meant to facilitate making deliberate choices as you're faced with these infinite options. And if you're currently in a position or you're looking at positions that look a lot like what you did or are doing in the military, that's not a bad thing at all. That's great. For some people, that's a great move. Um, the goal here is simply just to help make sure that you don't fall into something that feels familiar simply by default when you're looking at all the options that are there. So just to quickly cover kind of an agenda here, we'll talk about the three big losses that I've seen across the board everyone faces when leaving the military. We'll talk about setting standards before goals, actually, and then some of the frameworks that I personally use that I've kind of amended a little bit and would suggest to you to kind of pick and choose what works for you and to just consider. And so to clarify up front, this is not a goal setting discussion. There's tons of great resources for that. This is simply a framework that provides some structure within which your goals can stay on track and hopefully come to fruition for you. So, really brief bio on me. I'm from Virginia. I currently live in Raleigh, North Carolina with my wife and our almost 2-year-old little wild child. I spent about 8.5 years in the Army between the 173rd in Europe, the 75th Ranger Regiment, served as an ROTC instructor at Georgia Tech in Atlanta as one of my last assignments. While I was on active duty, I had the opportunity and took advantage of investing in some personal real estate stuff, mostly in Georgia when I was living down there and just on nights and weekends. So I'm not one that sits still very easily. So when I was not on deployment or not in a super active training cycle, was trying to invest and learn stuff kind of outside of the Army as well while I was still serving. I also served as the COO of a defense tech startup for a brief where we were making some widgets for special operations forces. After the Army, I started off in real estate private equity, and now I'm currently doing mergers and acquisitions, or talking to business owners to buy their business for our private equity company. Um, like Matt mentioned, one of my Army buddies and I started the Veteran Ventures podcast last year. We actually timely update here. We recorded our season one finale, which actually covers our 10 biggest lessons from all the conversations we've had about the military transition. And that'll actually be released on August 26th. So about a week and a half from now, we'll have our big finale episode from season one that has a ton of just compiled lessons from, you know, over 100 different conversations we've had. And then, I also can't help but work on some side projects when I get an idea. So I wrote a children's book for our son last summer. We got a group of mostly former military and athletes that are all over the country that do monthly challenges, most of which are physical. So if any of those things interest you or spark your interest, spark your imagination, feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk any of those above topics with you. You can probably tell I get pretty passionate about each of them. But before I go any further, why does any of my background matter? And I just wanted to kind of say the reason I mention all this is because I've been directly in your position before trying to figure out what's next. In fact, I've been there several times. I wanted to do work that was purposeful and with great people. And everything we're about to discuss are things that I personally do to provide a little bit of structure for all the chaos that life inevitably throws at you, especially during the military transition. But as a quick disclaimer, I've taken the best ideas from others, I've combined them, I've personalized them, and I've designed this framework, if you will, that works for me. But it's a constant process of iteration. And just because it works for me, it may not work for you. One of my biggest pet peeves in the military was senior leaders that prescribe their path to you because it worked for them. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you, nor does it work within your goals. And so I would just say take the best and leave the rest, and let's jump into it. So after hundreds and probably thousands of conversations at this point with veterans and transitioning service members, I've seen that everyone has the same three struggles. They sense a loss of purpose, a loss of tribe, and a loss of security. And whether this happens before you leave the military, you're kind of anticipating it happening, or whether it happens 10 or 15 years afterwards, and that's when you truly kind of realize those losses. People across that entire spectrum or timeline, I've noticed, voice the exact same thing, and everyone inevitably feels it. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so let's prepare for that to happen and take some proactive steps to kind of preempt that occurring. And so, in the military, there's training schedules, career progressions, PCS timelines, all these things that are pretty set for you. Again, there's variants, but they're relatively set. And once you leave the military, those fixed variables don't transition with you. And so these frameworks hopefully help solve some of that loss of security, which in turn can help facilitating finding a deep purpose that is worth pursuing. Because I think that's what we're all aiming to do, is just live a fulfilling life that's backed by a deep purpose. And so, before we jump into any long-term vision or goals or habits that we'll discuss briefly, I found the best place to start is actually setting standards. And there's no need to explain to you military people the importance of standards. I mean, that's the foundation that we're kind of built on. But personally, for years, I've set goals, like long-term goals, annual goals, weekly, daily goals, you name it. I'm a big like type A achiever, which I'm sure a lot of you are. And I still believe goal setting is incredibly important. I still set goals, but the big problem is the goalpost always moves. And I know mine, every single time I hit a goal, there's another one that's exponentially further out. And so it's just a constant process of kind of chasing your tail. And so several years ago, I decided to set personal standards. And these are fundamental guidelines that direct my future goal setting, my decisions, my habits, and overall direction. And I found these to be a really helpful foundation for then future goals and other things. And so, personally, it helps to have an example of what your standards might be. I like the 3 to 5 rule that the Army presents. So I've got 3 personal standards. Mine are live with integrity, which is doing what you say you'll do, default to generosity, and then thirdly, be an emboldening presence for others. And I never truly expected how frequently I'd refer back to these standards to inform decisions. It was like all of a sudden there was a lot of clarity. A lot of decisions became no brainers because I had these standards so clearly pointing towards which direction to choose. And so whether it was small decisions about how much to tip or whether to attend a social event or large decisions that have changed the trajectory of my entire life, these standards have provided a lot of clarity. So I'd encourage each of you over the next week or so, identify your standards. I'm sure as you think about it, you probably already know what they are, or you're already generally filtering decisions through those standards every day. But there's a lot of power in deliberately thinking through them, writing them down, and then routinely referencing back to them. So overall, don't lose your goals, but set your standards first. And so we'll kind of start big picture and then zoom in a little bit here. But a lot of people talk about, setting a 10-year vision or 10-year goal, 5-year goal. And I actually think that those are too far out. I think those are you in 10 years are going to look dramatically different than you today. And so I think it's impossible to truly anticipate what that is going to be like and set helpful goals for that timeline. And so this is just a book by Cameron Harold. It's a great book, but I could explain it to you in the next 30 seconds and prevent you from having to read the book. But the concept is vividly picturing yourself 3 years from now. Think about who you're with, what you're doing, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, kind of engage all the emotions and senses of sitting in your body 3 years from now. And the key is focusing on the what it feels like, what you're doing, all the what, and not how you get there. So you don't be constrained by trying to put the pieces in place right now to get to that future state. Simply think about the what. And you might be wondering, why 3 years? 3 years is kind of the perfect medium. I mentioned 10 and 5 is a bit too long. You look dramatically different. But 1 year, while a lot can happen, it's kind of too short of a time horizon to change a whole lot or change dramatically. Whereas in 3 years, I think your life could be 100% different than it is right now. And so you can write it out. I personally write mine out in the present tense in third person as if it's like a newspaper talking about me or a magazine article or something. Or you could write it in first person like a journal entry. And for those that are married, I recommend doing it kind of separate from your spouse. My wife and I do them individually and then kind of combine them and join our visions together from there. And then, it can be a little bit awkward or you have to overcome a little bit of humility sometimes, but I recommend sharing it with others. It'll hold you accountable, but I've been surprised countless times at how the world kind of conspires to make it happen alongside you when you share your vision with others. Really quick story on, I had my vision detailed out with my wife. We started this process in 2018 and have continued it through today. And one of my assignments, I mentioned I taught at Georgia Tech for the Army as an ROTC instructor. I was presented with the alternate assignment of going to teach at ROTC at the U.S. Virgin Islands. And to me, at first blush, I was like, man, this is incredible. Who gets the chance to go to the U.S. Virgin Islands or go to any sort of like tropical, great location with the Army? Probably almost no one. And so at first, I was all over. We were about to jump on the opportunity, and then we thought through it. We referenced back to our vivid vision, and there are a number of things in there that conflicted with. We wouldn't have been able to do any real estate investing in the Virgin Islands, of course, unless we were doing it remotely. So there were X, Y, and Z reasons why it didn't fit within our vision. And as we kind of ran things through that filter, that really quickly helped us make the decision. No, Atlanta is a better decision, not only for our future, but for our family and for where our vivid vision is kind of spelling out for us. So. Um, Again, I'm happy to provide. I'll even provide you a copy of my personal current Vivid Vision if you'd like. Feel free to reach out, or Matt can connect us, and happy to send those along as an example if you want to do your own. It always helps to start with something concrete. The next is an annual review. This one is people have 1,000 different ways to do an annual review or kind of annual checkup. So I'll keep this pretty short, but this is kind of some things that I put together that really help my wife and I get ready for each new year. And so first one is getting light, meaning cleaning out your email inbox, your car, your desk, all the room or the closet that collects all the random things you don't know where else to put it. Like sort through it or get rid of a bunch of stuff because you'd be surprised at the kind of mental toll that can take on you if you just have things piled up both digitally or physically. Then I go to reviewing the previous year. Nothing crazy here, but reviewing our calendar. My wife and I keep a physical calendar that we can actually see everything that happened throughout the year, kind of high level. Then I write thank you notes. I try and write at least 5 to 10 thank you notes a year to friends, family, mentors that had a particular role or large effect throughout that year and have had tremendous reconnections or just a great way to keep in touch with people and truly express how much they mean to me. And then finally planning out the next year. Again, a physical calendar, but if you're more of a digital type person, perfectly fine. But have some sort of calendar that schedules everything out and put things actually on that calendar. So more of what gave you energy. Consider a Misogi. If you're not familiar with a Misogi, it's a large event, the kind of a year defining event that some people say the two rules are you can't die and should have a 50% chance of failure. So it's something that's actually challenging, but it's not going to risk life, limb, or eyesight. And then, the last thing you want to do each year is look back and say, I just didn't have the time to fit in the important things that I've been wanting to do. So schedule those important things first, put them on that calendar, and your year will look a lot better. Next, again, as we kind of work our way down, going back to that vivid vision, I just a force of habit or kind of a practice that I do is review that on a quarterly basis. I physically print mine off. I highlight in green things that we've completed over that 3-year period, things in yellow that are in progress, and things in like pink or red that are not really started yet. And so that it's very clear. I have one every single quarter, and I can see the progress as we move through that 3-year, and it really keeps it front of mind um, as we continue to live into that vivid vision. Um, and then, the whole point of this is it's like the 1 in 60 rule that you've probably heard before. But if a pilot's flying just 1 degree off course after traveling 60 miles, they'll be an entire mile off their intended location. So imagine being 1 degree off, but for 3 years. If you don't reference back to that vivid vision, you could be entirely off the location or destination that you intended. And so it's simply an azimuth check just to stay on track. Monthly check-ins are the next kind of thing, and so each of these is nested within each other, to use a good old military term. Um, the one that my wife and I do each month is a life dinner. So on the first of each month, we sit down and ask a series of questions to each other. And when you first start this, it might feel clunky or awkward, but I promise you it's worth it if you press through. And it's quickly become, we've done it for the last maybe 5 or so years. It's become one of the most important parts of our relationship and something that's helped us keep on track as a couple. And it's not only for married couples. If you have a business partner or someone else in your life that helps keep you accountable, you can absolutely ask the same questions. You might want to tailor a couple of them just a little bit, but a very helpful practice for a partner of any sort. And so, how it works, we just set a recurring calendar invite. Sometimes it takes just 15 minutes that one evening. Other times it lasts a couple hours if we have other things to discuss or things that we've been meaning to talk about throughout the month. And there's just 3 categories of discussion. Again, I have a lot of these questions in a document. So if you want to deep dive here, or you think this is something that'd be helpful for you, always feel free to reach out and I can send you more details on it. But the 3 kind of areas of discussion are personal reflection on the previous month, relationship reflection on the previous month, and then personal goals looking forward at the next month. And it's just important to be in the moment and ask thoughtful questions while you're going through this exercise. And then the last part on the monthly side is just a personal review. This one some could say it's overkill. Like maybe I'm assessing myself too often, but at the beginning of each month, I also rate myself on a scale of 1 to 10. I can't use 7. So everybody just defaults to 7. So I eliminate that from any scales that I use. And I rate myself in 5 categories: faith, family, fitness, friends, and finances. And so for each of those categories, I've got a few clarifying questions that help kind of make sure I'm in line with my goals. And again, those are nested with annual goals, which is nested within the vivid vision, and kind of just continual azimuth check along the way. And yeah, both of these have really been game changers for me and for my relationships, both personal and professional relationships. And then finally, weekly habits. So has anyone here set a goal to do something every day and then quickly fallen off the train, not sticking with it? I 100% have. I think that's how most goals typically operate. It's like I'm going to do 100 push-ups a day or whatever your goal is, and then by day 4, like, man, I got sick, or I'm out in the field, and all of a sudden it just doesn't work. Um, and so all of a sudden you're off track, and this daily goal just doesn't work. So I'm much more a proponent of weekly goals or habits. I think they're much more sustainable. And the reason is because consistency is super important, but it doesn't equal perfection. It doesn't mean you need to be perfect in those goals. Um, what's most important is sticking with it for years or decades, even, to allow for that fractional improvement to allow compounding to take its effect. So one of the best examples, and you've probably heard the story of Jerry Seinfeld, but he committed to writing jokes constantly to improve his craft, and he used a large calendar. He put a red X over each day that he wrote, and he just was able to see the compounding effect of those regular small actions of just writing one small piece of comedy or one joke, and obviously that compounded into being a world-class comic. So I would just leave you with everything you want is on the other side of a very few small weekly habits that are maintained relentlessly for years. And then I'll conclude with this. I know this probably seems like a ridiculous amount of information to digest. I just gave you like 5 different frameworks that maybe some of them work for you, maybe some of them, maybe you can leave them. Um, and each of these could, of course, be a full discussion in and of themselves. But I can personally attest to the effect that they've had on my life, and how measuring these things has allowed me to optimize for what really matters, at least according to my vivid vision. And I offer you again, please don't hesitate to reach out or connect with me on LinkedIn if I can help at all. Um, and I'll leave you with one thing. Remember that overwhelming Netflix menu that I mentioned? Well, there's far too many choices, and this framework is meant to help you stop scrolling through all of those choices and decide what kind of story you want to live, and to find purpose, tribe, and security like we all need when we leave the service. And they say you only ever remember 3 things from any presentation. So if you just remember these 3 things, I think it'd be a success. One is set your standards. 2 is define your vision. And 3 is take relentless action and be consistent with that action. So your future isn't something you discover, it's something you design. So go out and start designing it. I really appreciate you all being here and keep crushing it. But
Wow.
I'd love to open it up to any questions you guys have.
Yeah, Griffin, no, thank you so much. That was fantastic. That your consistency slide definitely hit kind of home on me too. It's like, because you always think about consistency is that perfection. As soon as I don't know, whatever it is, it's like I'm going to be more committed to working out every single day or whatever, go on walks or whatever it is. And whatever it always feels like, as soon as you set your mind to that, it's like you start becoming ill just and start putting up mental roadblocks in your way to not meet that consistency, not meet that goal. But I like the fact that there's different versions of consistency. It's not every single day. It's maybe it's moving the ball forward, right? And being consistent about at least doing that. And I love that. That's great. I appreciate that. Yeah, if you have a question for Griffin, please raise your hand. Hit the hand button, raise your hand. I'll call on you. Go ahead, Chuck.
Griffin, this is more of a personal question. When you were with the 75th, what years were those?
I was there from 2019 to 2022.
Did you do any jaded exercises?
Yes.
All right, so you know Chief Rod and everything like that. This was more of a personal thing than.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the team.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was your overhead.
Oh, nice. Small world, man. Bolmer, I definitely recognize your name.
Well, that's all I had. Sorry. Thanks.
Good to see you.
It's actually quite this community. I mean, even if you look at the numbers, right, 323 folks. Like I've met so many people just through this process within the last 2 weeks that are connected in some way with the 75th. Whether that be speakers that are coming in to speak here in the next couple of weeks, or folks that are connected through our students. It's an interesting, it's a very small but far-reaching group of individuals that have been touched by the 75th for sure. But yeah, if you got a question, like I said, for Griffin, please click that raise hand button. I got a question for you. Obviously, is your career, and as you transitioned out, obviously you did pursue kind of a traditional job role function, but then what made you do enter in and kind of found with your buddy, how did you come across and do this Veteran Ventures podcast and come up with that and what inspired you to do that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I started off with a SkillBridge program working for that real estate private equity company, thinking that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I thought I had done a lot of research. I kind of started investing in real estate and kind of thought that that was the eventual ending point for a lot of people that were going down that path. And I did really enjoy it. I learned a lot, worked with some great people, and learned enough in that SkillBridge timeline to know that that's not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so I was incredibly thankful for that opportunity to learn. I often say to people when we talk about this on our podcast finale is it's really hard to know. People will often ask you, what do you want to do? And it's almost impossible to answer that question if you don't have enough data or like experience to inform it. I actually recommend starting with the question, what do you not want to do? Because it's a lot easier to answer that. You can say where you don't want to live. You can say what kind of work you don't want, what kind of people you don't want to work with. And all of a sudden from there, you can narrow into what you really do want. So I learned what I don't want to do with that SkillBridge program, which led me into my current job. And it was a conversation like I'm sure most of you have had 1,000 times. I was talking with one of my good Army buddies about how for us at least, the military transition process left a lot to be desired. Be it TAPS, be it the countless options. I mean, stuff like what Seven Eagle does is incredible because it really helps you hone in on what options are out there and kind of gives you some direction. I unfortunately did not go through a program like this. And so from there, we decided, we're having these conversations anyways. What if we can just get a bunch of really successful veterans who are following paths that are maybe less conventional, that aren't necessarily Fortune 500 companies, although some of them do work for those companies? What if we can just have those conversations publicly, add some value to those people, add value to hopefully our listeners who are transitioning out, and help them have a smoother transition than what we had? Because another big, point of recommendation is have a bunch of informational interviews with people, have dozens or hundreds of informational interviews to find out if that career field is really the one you want to approach. And so now, we've recorded 54 episodes. That's 54 conversations with, a lot of them are really hard to reach veterans that you can access at any point, kind of as a front row seat. So that was why we started the podcast. We thought it'd be a good way to give back, for one, stay connected to the community, and hopefully give people a front row seat to good conversations.
Yeah, no, I looked through some of the folks that you have spoken with, and I recognize some of those names that have been on your podcast over this last year because we've had them here as mentors at our academy. So, obviously getting that word out and sharing our stories and sharing our experiences to give insights to the next individuals coming up out of the military is it's great. It's a great feeling to give back to that community and stay connected, like you said. So what's, obviously you're coming up for your first year anniversary of the podcast, right? What's next in store for you guys as far as the Veteran Ventures podcast goes?
Yeah, it's a good question. We want to continue having great conversations with impressive veterans. So we're trying to get people on the show that offer unique insights, maybe that are slightly less typically harder to get in touch with. That we've had actually a great problem in that when we started the podcast, we started having people come out of the woodwork, either referring us to people or asking to come on the show. So we've been very fortunate not to have to go seek out any guests. We've had a plenty long queue to work with, but just want to keep on having great conversations and add to the just the catch line I like to use is making the transition process easier, one conversation at a time. So just have additional conversations that might shine light or give some perspective into the people that are leaving the military.
And you said you done 52, so you do one podcast a week?
We do, yeah. We release one a week. Our 54th is that season 1 finale, and then we'll pick up season 2 at some point down, maybe a couple months. And that one releases on the 26th of August. So that'll be kind of our bow on season 1.
Okay.
But like you mentioned, like we had Nate Boyer on the show, who's former Green Beret. Now, he's into acting. He does all kinds of things. Really interesting guy. We had Kelly Perdue on the show, who won season 2 of The Apprentice. We had Jesse Awuji, who's a NASCAR driver. And then I think what's even better, those guys are all great, and you might recognize a couple names, and they do some cool things. But I think what's even better than them is some of the guests we've had on the show that you wouldn't recognize their name, but they're only 2 steps ahead of you in the transition process, because somebody who's 20 steps ahead of you is a lot harder to relate to than someone that's 2. And so I think a lot of their stories are even more relatable or more helpful as you're transitioning because they've got recency.
Yeah. Now you can't say Nate's name around here. He was supposed to be here yesterday for us. We're gonna reach back out to him.
Scratch Nate. Yeah.
No, he had a scheduling conflict. I can't give him too much crap. He was a Seattle Seahawk when I was rooting for him, so
Oh
can't give him
yeah.
much. But yeah, we'll have him back on our at the academy here shortly. I
Just
posted.
have him. I was
Go
gonna say
ahead.
have Nate make up for it by giving you a couple of the lines from the whiskey companies and his beef company that he's currently advertising.
Okay, there you go. I appreciate that. I will write that down because that's a good one. I did post for the YouTube link. There's you guys are also on Spotify as well, and as well as Apple, correct?
That's
Uh,
right. Mhm.
so that's the link for the YouTube. You can find the other links as well, I believe, on the YouTube channel for the Spotify and Apple. Get connected with Griffin and what they're doing with the Veteran Ventures podcast. Listen in. Like I said, I don't think you can't. I don't think there's too much information you can absorb and insights you can absorb from fellow veterans that have made that transition and the steps that they have taken, throughout their career. And like you said, those kind of ready, relevant folks that have transitioned here recently. Um, it just applies more to what we're talking about here, and because everybody's, you know, stuff that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago may not have the same effect of folks that have transitioned here recently, just like you have, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm looking through some of the chats now. We'd love to have Mr. Ballin on the podcast. Still working on getting him scheduled. Um, but yeah, would love for you guys to check it out if you're interested at all. Again, zero pressure. There's plenty of resources out there, but hopefully it can provide at least one or two good conversations for you. We don't put a ton of editing process into our YouTube show, but all of our stuff on Spotify and Apple is, I think, a great place to dial in a little bit.
No, I appreciate it. Like I said, if you do have any other questions for Griffin, please raise your hand. I'll call on you. But I appreciate your time, Griffin, today, and kind of coming in and pouring into this community and giving your insights and this kind of this presentation to us. It was very eye-opening. It's put me in kind of a different frame of thinking on different things as well, and I appreciate that because sometimes we just don't. We always look at something from one direction and we don't get that other perspective. And I appreciate that you came in and delivered that other perspective. Go ahead, John.
Hi, Griffin. Really appreciate like what you're putting out there. Is there any way we can get like a copy of those slides? Because I definitely kind of want to dig through that again a little bit.
Yeah, of
My
course.
my question for you specifically, how important is like journaling to your process? Is that something that you do, or is that kind of taken care of by like the list that you come up with and you're highlighting and all that kind of stuff?
I think journaling is incredible. I'm just terrible at it. So it's never been part of my process, but I think it's fantastic for most. And so if it's something that works for you, then I would say absolutely over index on that. For me, going through kind of these frameworks has helped me replace journaling. So I don't feel like I need to rely on journaling, but I've got a lot of friends that do and have a lot of benefit from it. I don't
Awesome,
know if that
thanks.
answers your question, but I just dropped my LinkedIn in the chat as well. Always happy to connect with people. Feel free to message me or reach out if you have any questions there too. So yeah, I'm an open book and try to make myself as available as possible to, especially for other veterans to get them, you know, help in any way that I can.
Yeah. No, I
On
appreciate it.
these,
Great question,
on
John. You were saying something, Griffin?
I was just gonna on these frameworks, guys. Do you have any questions on any specific ones? I always love to deep dive some of the specific, the vivid vision. I think is just a really powerful way to kind of realign myself and our family and the direction that we're going. But very open to any questions you guys have, or if you want to deep dive any of the pieces.
Second.
I guess I'll throw it out there. Do you ever find that the vision changes like mid-year? Like, is there like some kind of like maybe something, some significant event in your life and you go, holy crap, let me kind of go back to the drawing board and see kind of like how this affects the vision, and do I stay the course, or do I need to kind of like move it around a little bit because of whatever.
Yeah, I was hoping someone would ask that question, and the answer is absolutely. Like it's not a concrete vision that you set 1 year and then 3 years later you have to have to stick with it. That said, I think it's helpful to hold yourself accountable to that vision. Again, share it with others and they can help hold you accountable as well. But there's been times, large life changes happen, and I think that vision should be adaptable to those. So by no means is it set and etched in blood, but I think it's helpful to have that written out and let it amend as needed over time.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I guess I'll kind of like I'll throw my story out there just a little bit. About a year or so ago, had a parent die. I'm not a person that kind of like writes down like a formal vision or anything about that, but kind of like one thing that I learned through that process a little bit is like don't take things for granted. And I know that sounds kind of trite, right? Like we hear that all the time. But kind of what I took away from that lesson is it's not always about us. Like we always think that we're going to be around or we're going to be able to do X, Y, Z, right? Like we need to remember that, other people are also affected by time. So like what does this like look like for me personally? Like, if there's a concert that I want to go to, like I'm going to go to the concert because we don't know if that person's going to live another 10 or 15 years, right? And we don't want to be in that spot of like, oh crap, I could have saw this concert and I didn't do it because I was too busy with work or whatever, and now I never get the chance.
Really well said. And for one, very sorry for your loss. I know that that's really difficult times, and I think that that's a perfect reason for having something written down like a vivid vision, because it's almost like having a written contract with anything else. It's a contract with yourself that I'm gonna remember this. I'm gonna take action in this way whenever I'm presented with something like that. And so we have a similar thing in ours. Anytime there's a significant wedding or funeral that we can physically get to, regardless of how inconvenient it is, we're gonna be there. And that's written in our vivid vision, so we know that's the type of people we are. That's how we're going to live our life, and that's the kind of presence we want to have in other people's lives as well. So I think that's a perfect example that you gave as to why having details like that. It could seem trivial. Something like that certainly is it, but you could have little things that are just like, we're gonna have a family dinner on every Thursday night, and that's the kind of life that we're gonna be living. And I think that's important to have it written down because it's more likely you'll stand by it.
Yeah. So I guess, sorry, I'm trying not to monopolize all these questions, right?
No.
So how do you keep the accountability to the vision? Is that like something that like you and your wife kind of discuss like at the table when you're doing your monthly meetings? Like what does that exactly look like?
Yeah, it's again, it's an iterative process. Our monthly meetings very much like we don't every single month bring out the vision, but at least every 3 month, every quarter we do to reassess it. And it's a collaborative process between the two of us. Um, Again, I mentioned doing it slightly separate from your spouse. You could do it together, whatever works, but we found that it's kind of helpful to see where we each stand separately and then bring it together and then collaborate on kind of melding that into one vision. And it's been an interesting practice, kind of seeing, making sure we're kind of thinking the same way. But if you do it independently, you learn where there might be some variances that you need to, friction points you might need to work through or figure out.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So, I'm gonna get off the mic because I feel like I'm taking too much time, but no, I really appreciate some of your answers. Like that's really good clarification. Like that helps me understand the process a little bit more, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you for your questions. They're great.
I appreciate that, John. Thanks for those amazing questions that you had. I do want to real quickly plug, if anybody's searching for those resume insights, Lori Norris is starting up her resume class over in Foundation. So if you are interested in finding out more about resumes or you need help with resumes, go ahead and go over to 7eagle.com/foundations and listen in on her talk, her 90-minute speech about resumes, the insights on crafting a perfect resume that will get you guys hired. Go ahead, Demario. Oh, I lost him.
How you doing, Griffin? Thank you for taking the time out to speak to us. And I found a lot of things that you talked about pretty enlightening. But I did have one question for you. Uh, Seeing that you did various things in your career outside of the military, like once you got out, wrote a book, does a podcast, you're doing a podcast, different things like that. Um, what is your position on having multiple streams of income, and when is it most advantageous or beneficial to you and your family? Me personally, I'm a family of five. So I have 3 kids. They're all under the age of 15, getting out of the military after 22 years. And my mindset is I want to be flexible for my kids, but still make some type of income. And my wife works full time as well for the military.
Awesome. Well, like, typical disclaimer, I'm certainly not a financial advisor in any way, shape, or form. And congrats to you on a 22-year career. That's incredible. Um, I'm assuming, given your career, you'll have some sort of, retirement from the military, which will help. But I'm certainly a proponent of multiple streams of income. I think having it de-risks your income, of course. It de-risks your retirement or your lifestyle going forward post service. That said, I think a lot of people smarter than I would say something to the effect of it's good to have multiple streams of income, but not at the expense of having a good stream of income. So if you have one that's doing really well, I wouldn't necessarily recommend in diversifying to 5 or 6 others simply to have additional streams of income. If you have one that's working well, I would recommend doubling down on what's working. And then once you get to a point where that's in a good position or maybe a sustainable position long term, then you could think about adding some other things. But I don't think, if you have 7 different streams of income that are all bringing in, a couple grand a year, that's probably not gonna do it for you. But so hopefully that answers your question to a degree. But I think that there's something to be said for doubling down when something is working. And really, there's an analogy of building the bridge. If you build one bridge, you don't want to stop it part way to build another bridge, because then you have 0 bridges connecting both sides. You want to have one bridge that's already connected, fully built before you start a second bridge. And then when you have one bridge built, build the second one and connect all of them. Then you have a bunch of connected bridges or streams of income. But make sure you've got one that's working well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no, great, good question. Good question.
Also, don't write a book if you want income. At least not in the beginning. Wait a long time. I certainly have
That's what
not
made me lead to that question, because I was like,
Yeah.
he wrote a book, he's doing a podcast, like there's other things that you got going on. Just wanted to hear kind of your what your concept of life was as far as that, that
Yeah.
particular thing.
Yeah, to be completely transparent, between the book, the podcast, and the real estate, only the last of those 3 has made any money. So the podcast, the book is 100% to give back or to do something that was, I was passionate about. The real estate is what has provided a solid stream of income. And so, again, real estate's not a get rich quick game by any means. It's a get rich slow. And so I'm a huge proponent of it. I'm happy to do a jam session with any of you on real estate anytime, and kind of the path that I took, because I think that the VA home loan that we all are afforded and only 15% of people use is a phenomenal way to create generational wealth through buying a 2, 3, or 4 unit property for $0 down. I mean, it's unparalleled. And I think you've probably had talks on here about that before, but yeah. So yeah, just to be clear, writing a book or starting a podcast I think you can absolutely do all those things, and they're great endeavors. And I would encourage you to do it, but don't do it for the money behind it.
Thank you.
You just turned off a bunch of people of podcasting. No, I'm just kidding. No,
The return is in the connections and the conversations, not in the income.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So actually, I think someone asked that question earlier in the chat. You said obviously you have a published book out there. I think someone asked what was the name of the book that you did write.
Oh yeah, it's called Our Morning. I'll actually toss in the chat. It's Our Morning Walk. It's just a book that I wrote for our son. We had a particularly rough first year of parenthood, so maybe a few others could probably relate to that. But I'll drop it in the chat here just as if anyone's at all interested. Appreciate you asking.
Yeah, yeah, I wanted to get that. So is it it's fully published? It's out there to buy hardcover and stuff like that on Amazon, I'm assuming.
It is. Yep, I'll drop the Amazon link here. And anyone that reads it or checks it out, happy to provide a signed copy at some point if I meet you. But also, you'll see what the back of my neighborhood looks like, because it's essentially an illustrated kind of version of the walk that my son and I do every morning out the back of our house.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well,
So
Griffin,
if you want to come try and find me in Raleigh,
yeah,
it'll help.
yeah, there you go. Well, Griffin, again, thank you so much for being here and giving back to the community like you like to do. And I appreciate what you do on your podcast as well, bringing those veteran voices that do pour into our community and give back and give their insights. I'd love to have you back at another date and time as well to connect with more of our community that's coming through the academy. But obviously, you did post your LinkedIn. Please connect with Griffin. Reach out to him if you've got questions. This is what this community is all about, right? Reaching out and having those people in your back pocket and help you sort through some of the decisions that you're going through, and maybe Griffin can provide that sounding board that you're looking for on your next career opportunity and next steps, outside of the military. But Griffin, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Again, I'd love to participate in this again, if it's talking about the same stuff we discussed today, or if it'd be beneficial to talk about, the 10 lessons learned or some of the stuff that we've discussed on the podcast. There's plenty of other things that might be helpful. But for everyone that's on here listening, thanks for your time, and you're doing amazing things. It can seem like an overwhelming process, but the fact that you're in a program like this and taking the time to listen to these conversations, I think you're leaps and bounds ahead of where most others would be. So props to you, and keep doing great work. There's nothing but good things ahead.
All right. Appreciate it, Griffin. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Matt. Same to you. See everyone.
Bye. All right. No, I appreciate Griffin coming in and talking about that. I'm glad he was able to provide that presentation to you guys. I encourage you, if you have time, go log in, subscribe to his YouTube, follow his Veteran Ventures podcast. I did put in the chat, and I said it before, if you are curious about more insights on resume writing, the myths behind resumes and stuff like that, that talk is going on over in Foundations. So feel free. I know you've missed kind of the first part of it, but feel free to jump over to that if you would like, and dive into a little bit more about that resume writing process from Lori Norris, who has more than 22 years of experience helping veterans and their community navigate